What's up, Disc Priest? Flintoid here again, talking to you from a post-beta video this time. Legion has launched. It's about 49 hours from when Legion launched, and I just wanted to kind of discuss where I was at, where I want to be, and like my adventure along the way and how I got to where I am. So, kind of to give you a viewpoint of where I'm at 831 item level. I finished all of the Mythics earlier today, probably at about the 36, maybe 30 hour mark. I was done with all the Mythic Dungeons. Finished all the heroics for now, and then I'm I wouldn't say decently far into Suramar, but I've done some stuff in Suramar. I still have a lot of quests I have to do there. I feel slightly behind in Suramar because I put so much emphasis on gearing myself, even though I have quite a while to gear myself. But all my world quests are done, and I guess I just kind of wanted to discuss differences from beta from now. There was like a small buff that Disc Priest got right before Legion dropped, really, the first couple days. So how that kind of affected Disc Priest, and what I changed up from beta. Because there was a couple of things that I definitely changed up from beta as far as my healing goes, my damage goes, so I'll get right into it. So as soon as I hit, I guess my leveling first, so my leveling, I started in Asuna, went to Val'sharah, which Val'sharah was my favorite zone. I'm not going to spoil anything, but by far the best, like the most story, driven. The zone was beautiful. Just everything about it was awesome. High Mountain was my least favorite, probably because of all the elevation. Hemet Nussing Way quests in here were kind of cool. It's kind of a bonus quest off this side here. And then I went Asuna, Val'sharah. I half finished Stormheim, and then I went off and did something. I can't remember what I did. Oh, went to High Mountain. Finished High Mountain, then I finished up in Stormheim. So I didn't mind Stormheim, but the problem was I leveled with a group, and a lot of Stormheim, especially early on, the quests are individual. So even if you complete, let's say I collected 5 bear claws, in my group, even if they were right next to me, they could still be 0 of 5. So I wasn't too big a fan of that. So if you're single, like don't plan on leveling with anyone, I think I would recommend starting out in Stormheim just because it's kind of geared towards that. But I would save High Mountain for last, because if you can hit 110 before you finish High Mountain, I might recommend it. And then just come back and do the quest later. As soon as you hit 110, I took kind of a not-so-typical path. I ran into my order hall, bought my 830 piece that you can get, and then I jumped right into Mythic Dungeons. So, Mythic Dungeons, when I started, I had 794, 795 item level. So I was just severely undergeared at the time. My highest piece was an 830 head piece that you get. And I was in a guild group, so basically as soon as we all hit 110, we're like, alright, well, we're gonna go show up this Mythic Dungeon, and we ended up actually completing it. And the one we did was Eye of Ashara. So the first couple bosses in Mythic Dungeons, don't get me wrong, they're really difficult, and when you're like that low, but once you get some gear, they're not too bad, but they really emphasize mechanics, especially when your gear is that low. So any mechanic that we messed up or didn't know, we just got one shot and killed. We actually didn't wipe on any of the first 4 bosses because we were really careful. But the last boss was really difficult. There's just so many mechanics, and you really can't get hit by any of them or you're screwed. People get thrown into the air by tornadoes. It was really difficult. It actually took us 6 pulls, 2 with heroism, 4 without, and we actually had to wait for the heroism in order to kill it. It was just, the push was really difficult with our gear. So we ended up killing that, and then we said, ugh, I don't know if we want to do the rest, so we ended up kind of going our separate ways, doing Suramar quests. Got like a little bit of gear, and then we kind of got back together after we were all 805 and finished them. So that was cool. And then in between we would take some breaks, so we didn't just spam Mythics the entire time. We did a couple Mythics, and then we took a break, and then I would sneak in like a random heroic to get some extra gear, so it would be easier to heal. But I kind of want to talk a little bit about healing with like really low gear. So in beta, I really emphasize Schism as a talent because it's excellent. The throughput it puts out and the buff it gives you actually makes itself worth casting really fast. So if you Schism Penance, it's basically the value of that penance because of the Schism buff is like 90% of castigation. So like all you have to do is cast one more move or have your Purge of the Wicked running at the same time, or Shadow Word Pain running at the same time, and you've already gained the value of Schism. So I thought this was an excellent trait, but with everyone being so low, I ended up having to switch to castigation. And the reason that was because castigation, it wasn't necessarily because castigation is amazing. It is pretty good, and I have been running it still. But castigation frees me up to cast more Shadow Mends, which I had to spot heal really, really hard when tanks are dropping every auto attack 30% of their health. So I had to pretty much constantly spam heal the tank, and then if DPS get hit by mechanics or just natural boss damage, then I had to heal that up too. So castigation was actually really nice because it just freed my thinking up. I didn't have to think about keeping a Schism debuff. I actually used Schism for the first 4 bosses of this, and I switched for Wrath of Ashara. So that's just super high intensive healing. I had to use castigation. So moving on, Body and Soul I stayed the same, Shining Force I stayed the same. Often it was really rare that I would use Shining Force in the dungeon unless we were in something like Black Rookhold where I would just throw them against the wall. But interrupts were huge when we were underleveled, so my Shining Force, my Arcane Torrent, which is a silence, which you only get if you're a Blood Elf, and Psychic Scream was really big. I probably, a couple times I did spec into Psychic Voice, so I just had more of a fear. But most of the time I just stuck with Shining Force because there was a couple times where the tank had to run away from the ads and I blew them back and then hurried up flash healed on them and then kind of like a mini reset on the ads. And then Mindbender over Solace because I wasn't worried about damage. I just had to heal more. Mindbender just gave me mana as we went. So for this trait, I switch it up a little bit, just tried each one. And at first, for the longest time, I was running Power Infusion, just with the thought process that during the intensive phase that I would be able to catch up, because once Dix Priests get behind, they have a really hard time catching back up, especially when there's a lot of throughput healing to go out. They're really good at maintaining at like a really low level, but once damage occurs, hard and often, they start to fall behind. So I thought Power Infusion would be good, but I ended up switching to Twist of Fate, because Twist of Fate, often people were dropping below 20%, below, definitely below 35%. So it would give me this huge healing buff, and since Shadowman was pretty much what I was casting the entire time, it just made my Shadowman hit harder, my crits just insane with Twist of Fate. And then my Entombment healing was increased because of the damage too. So that was really nice. Twist of Fate, actually, I think I would recommend if you're undergeared. I don't know if I'd mess with Power Infusion too much until you get some gear. It's still really good, but yeah, I don't know. Divine Star is standard. I didn't mess with Clarity Will, but I don't think I would. 2.5-second cooldown is just too long to warrant a small bubble. Relatively small bubble, anyway. Grace, definitely Grace. Purge of the Wicked is way too risky to be picking on when you're undergeared. So, that's my recommendation. You can switch it up if you want, try some stuff out. The only thing that even I would recommend from switching from this, while you're undergeared still, once you're overgeared it doesn't even matter. Like, I switched to Power Infusion and Schism now that I've kind of overgeared the dungeons at like 831. So, you might switch up Power Infusion and Twist of Fate. That might be personal preference, but I found that Twist of Fate I was proccing often. So, let's see, what else? Gear-wise, so let's see, for my Mythics, I'm not sure why, but Warforged seems to be proccing a lot. Like, I got this this Titan Forge head was from a quest reward. This neck was from a boss drop, you know. Warforge, normal. So I actually have more Warforged gear than normal gear, which was kind of alarming to me, because it was actually unusual it got to the point where even other people, it was unusual to see, you know, normal gear dropping. So I don't know if in Legion there's just a way higher rate for it to drop. Here, let me show you some, because I put some in my guild bank too. So this dropped another Warforge. This wasn't Warforged. This wasn't Warforged. So I got some decent gear. I got 4 trinkets, which was cool and people were jealous about, because now I can experiment. But I would have much rather got 850 or 840 gear for some of the slots that I wasn't able, like I still have 800, 820s, so that would have been nice to replace those. My suggestion to most people wouldn't, I say pretty much everyone, wouldn't be to jump into Mythic Dungeons right away. They're actually, if you don't know the mechanics really well on each boss, it's going to be really difficult. I would recommend pretty much staying away from Mythic Dungeons for most people until 820. Once you've done heroics, understand the mechanics really well. That's the biggest thing, is the mechanics. There's a lot of bosses that actually, there's very few bosses that have just a straight up healing check or a straight up damage check. Most of them are, if you obey all of the mechanics of this fight, it's going to be really easy. But if you mess up any of them, it's going to be really difficult. So, if you want a path that you probably should take once you start doing Mythics, in my opinion, the easiest ones are going to be Eye of Ashara, followed by either Maw of Souls or Vault of the Wardens. So, surprisingly, Vault of the Wardens is really easy. I thought it was going to be really difficult, but it's really easy until you hit... honestly, Cordana wasn't even that hard. If people follow the mechanics in Cordana and you have a good person to get the eye, it's really easy. So, I would say Eye of Ashara, and then Vault of Wardens, Maw of Souls, Netherian Lair. Those 3 are all kind of on the same level. Maybe these 4 are all on like the easier. Even Assault on Violet Hold was pretty easy. Oh man, it's hard to rate these. Netherian's Lair might be harder than these other ones. But I would say definitely the hardest one is Halls of Valor. Halls of Valor is Darkheart Thickets. The last boss is difficult if you don't... Honestly, they're not all that bad. Halls of Valor, the first boss is really... If you can get past the first boss, you can beat the shit out of this dungeon. That first boss was huge. Damage check, healing check, tank check, positioning check. But the rest was pretty easy. So that's my advice. Pretty much as soon as you hit 110, you should be doing some dailies. Just try to get your item level in any way possible up to like slightly higher item level. Suramar is really good to start out. They got some really good gear in there, artifact power. I wouldn't recommend... I guess you should complete your world quests. The world quests aren't a big deal, but let's say that you have something like, I don't know, that you're really looking forward to, like this piece of gear. If you're a higher item level, this piece of gear will also be a higher item level. So what you can do is actually come back later if you know that you're gonna hit like an 8-10 mark or something. So that's what I'm up to. Don't really know what I'm going to be doing for the rest of the week besides world quests and Suramar dailies. So we'll see. Probably helping some other guildies get their mythics done, grind them out. I think we have like 10 people that are fully locked out in the guild now for mythics. Maybe I think 10's accurate. So till next time, I'm gonna post a bunch of videos of the undergeared, us being undergeared and trying these mythics out. I unfortunately didn't get my first one where we did Eye of Ashara really undergeared, but the rest are still like 8-15, 8-10 item level. So, alright, see you guys later.